سيئات أعمالنا. We praise Allah, ask for His help, seek His guidance, seek refuge in Allah from the evil of ourselves and the consequences of our wrong actions. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير. وأشهد أن سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيبنا وقائدتنا وقرة أعيننا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه وحبيبه وخليله. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد عبدك ورسولك النبي الأمي وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. أما بعد إني أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. To proceed, I remind myself and you all of the importance of taqwa of Allah, that is reverential consciousness of Allah. قال الله تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. وقال تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Allah Most High says, believers, have taqwa of Allah and speak words which hit the mark. He will put your actions right for you and forgive you your wrong deeds. All who obey Allah and His Messenger have won a mighty victory. Alhamdulillah, we are fortunate that we find ourselves in this blessed month of Ramadan. And as you know, the first 10 days of which are mercy, the mid 10 days are forgiveness, and the final 10 days are complete salvation for the soul. And we usually describe this month as Ramadan Kareem, is that it's a generous month, is that it has a lot to give, and there's a lot of gifts that are given during this month. However, although inshallah we all receive a portion of the goodness of this month, is that not everyone receives the blessings of this month on an equal proportion. Is that this month you can see it like rain, or you can see it like a stream. Is that some people, they might just get a gulp of water, they might just get a handful of water. Other people, they might fill themselves up. Other people, they might take their vessels and fill their vessels up and bring it back to their families. Is that this is a metaphor for Ramadan. Is that some people get some portion, a large portion, and other people get a portion that's not of similar, that's not of similar rank. And that's why scholars such as Imam al-Ghazali and others, they say that there's 3 degrees of fasting. There's 3 degrees of fasting. So there's the fasting of the ordinary people, which is what we know, we abstain from food, we abstain from drink, we don't eat anything during the day hours of Ramadan, and that's 1 degree of fasting. But then there's different aspects of fasting, is that there's a higher degree of fasting, which is not only does a person refrain from food and drink, is that they refrain and they guard their limbs and they guard their eyes and they guard their body and their heart from all disobedience of Allah. Right? So they're guarding their eyes, they're guarding their tongue, their hands, their feet, and all their body parts from the disobedience of Allah. And then a higher degree of fasting, which they mention, is the fasting of the elect, which is that a person's heart is fasting from anything besides Allah. Is that all they're remembering is Allah, and they're not distracted with anything else. So we want to rise and we want to elevate ourselves in our level of fasting. We want to progress in our level or our degree of fasting and the meanings that we take from this blessed month and the blessings that we receive from this month. And I wanted to mention 4 points in particular that will hopefully allow us to optimize our experience of Ramadan and to capitalize on these great blessings. And that the first point that we should strive to make an effort to inculcate in ourselves is that we correct and we constantly renew our intention. And as you know, like any other action, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, is that actions are by their intentions. And yes, of course, we make the intention to fast Ramadan, but our intentions are not limited to just that intention. I just intend to fast Ramadan. Is that the doors of intentions are always open. Someone can intend greater things and higher things at any moment in their life. So for instance, besides the intention to fast Ramadan, some of the intentions that we could formulate during Ramadan is that you intend to receive the pleasure of Allah, is that you intend to expose yourself to the mercy of Allah, is that you intend to make this Ramadan a Ramadan which you rectify yourself, that you turn back to Allah with a sincere and a complete repentance and you rectify your condition. Make that intention that this is the Ramadan that we do so. That you make the intention that we eradicate bad habits and replace them with good habits during this blessed month of Ramadan. Is that we can make the intention that whatever distance that we had from the Book of Allah, is that we reconnect with the Book of Allah, such that, outside of Ramadan, we have a daily portion and a daily connection with the Book of Allah. So these are left for the realm of reflection, is that we should all think about the intentions that we can make. And like I said, the door of intentions is always open. So that's what we could attend. But there's also a focus on how to make an intention, right? In other words, we have to be mindful and conscious of our intention. And that's why they mention that the danger of performing a lot of good deeds and of a lot of acts of worship and ibadah, the pitfall for acts of ibadah, acts of worship and good deeds, is that they become a customary habit. Is that they lose their spirit, they lose their intention, or someone does them not because they do them automatically, they're on autopilot. And that this is the pitfall of acts of worship, because if someone is doing these acts of worship without the proper intention, then they're not going to get the full benefit of these acts of worship. So what is it that gives these acts of worship? What is it that gives acts, good deeds? What is it that gives it its spirit? It's the intention. The intention is the ruh, is the spirit that gives actions meaning. And that's why it's very interesting, if you look at the Arabic language, is that the word ibadah and the word aada, ibadah is worship, and aada is just habits, is that it's literally the difference between the two is literally just a ba. Right? So ibadah and aada. And we don't want our ibadah, our worship, to become habits. So what is it that transforms our worship from habits into actual worship? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. It's that ba that you find with intentions, is that ba is that gives our life to our acts of worship. And this is why, although obviously in the Hanafi and Maliki schools, it's valid to make the intention to fast Ramadan from the first night. You make a general intention that you're going to fast the whole month. But the Shafi school in particular, is that you actually have to renew your intention every night. And there's a wisdom in that, is that every night, or before suhoor, or before we start fasting, we should think about our intention, and be conscious of our intention, and realize that this is an individual day, and that this is an individual act of worship. So not taking it for granted, and not taking it as a custom or as a habit, and going along with the flow and going on autopilot, but being conscious of the fact that fasting on these days is an act of worship. Fasting on these days is what Allah has required us to do, and that He is pleased with these actions, and we want to meet that good pleasure of Allah with open hearts and with right intentions. And when we make our intentions, another point that we can focus on is not just to fast itself, but to be accepted in our fasting. Is that we want to be accepted in this fast. It's an act of worship. We're presenting it before Allah. We're trying our best to make it a good act of worship, and we hope when we pray that Allah accepts these acts of worship. Right. So the acceptance is actually more important than the act itself. So may Allah accept from us all and bless us in this Ramadan. The second point that I want to mention that we can focus on to optimize Ramadan is that we follow the Sunnah, the prophetic practices that the Prophet ﷺ performed during this blessed month of Ramadan. And the Sunnah in this context, it means that those actions which are not obligatory per se, but they're highly encouraged and they're recommended. And there's a lot of Sunan, there's different prophetic actions during Ramadan but amongst the most important ones are obviously partaking in suhoor, right, the pre-dawn meal. And that even though it might be a little bit difficult to wake up so early, is that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that partake in suhoor, because in this pre-dawn meal is barakah, this blessing. So we should try to partake in it as much as possible, even if it's something small, even if it's a date or a glass of water. But the fact that it's a sunnah is that we should partake in this, and we should be keen not to miss it. However, there's an important point that the pre-dawn meal is not obligatory. So if someone happens to miss it, they still have to fast, of course. Right? It doesn't affect the status of their fasting. And then another important sunnah is to end suhoor a bit early. Right? So not ending suhoor, not ending suhoor right when Fajr time comes in, but out of precaution, is that ending a little bit early so that you have no doubts whatsoever, right? Beyond a shadow of a doubt. And that's why it's good to end perhaps 15 to 20 minutes early, maybe even a little bit earlier, but 15 to 20 minutes at least. And then there's also another point that can be mentioned, is that there seems to be a misconception sometimes, is that if Fajr comes in, or in a Muslim country, if the adhan is called, and you're still partaking in your suhoor, you can't eat that food anymore. You can't consume the food. I've heard some fatwas where if Fajr comes in or the adhan is called, then you just finish what you're eating. Is that that's not valid. Once the adhan is called, once Fajr comes in, is that that's the time when you have to fast. You can't consume anything else after that. So if you have anything in your mouth, you can't consume it. So another important prophetic sunnah, again, is that when we break the fast, is that we hasten to break the fast, so we don't delay the iftar. But again, there's another important point here, is that that's once certainty is achieved. Right? So sometimes we might think, oh, the sunnah is to hasten to break the fast, so as soon as the clock ticks and iftar enters, we break our fast. But we should be cautious, because sometimes there's variance in the tables, right? Sometimes different latitudes and etc. They affect the time of iftar. So it's always good to hasten, it's sunnah to hasten to break the fast when we have certainty. So they mention that it's a good thing to wait 3 minutes, 5 minutes until you have complete certainty. Obviously, if you can see the sun and you see that it's set, then you break your fast. But not everyone is aware of those things per se. And then another important sunnah is that especially before we break our fast, is that it's not a time to be distracted, it's not a time to look at our cell phones, it's not a time to start talking, is that before we break our fast is a time that dua is accepted, and it's a time to remember Allah and to turn to Allah. It's not a time to be antsy. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّ لِلصَّائِمِ عِنْدَ فِطْرِهِ دَعْوَةً مَا تُرَدْ, is that the one who's fasting, is that he has, at the time of breaking his fast, is that he has a supplication, a da'wah, that will not be rejected. So a lot of people, we forget about this sunnah, is that before breaking fast we should definitely be in dhikr and in remembrance of Allah. And if you look at the Prophet's du'as, is that they're very beautiful du'as. He used to say when he broke his fast, he said, Allahumma inni laka sumtu, wa bika amantu, wa alayka tawakkaltu, wa ala rizqika aftartu. Oh Allah, for your sake I have fasted, and I believe in you, and I trust on you, my trust is on you. And by your provision and your rizq, your food, I break my fast. And then another dua that the Prophet used to say is that ذَهَبَ الظَّمُّ وَابْتَلَتِ الْعُرُوقُ وَثَبَتَ الْأَجْرُ إِنْشَاءَ اللَّهِ, is that thirst is alleviated, and it has been quenched, and that the reward of Allah, inshallah, has been secured, inshallah, by the permission of Allah. So that's the second point that I wanted to mention, is that following the sunnah during the month of Ramadan, and even if it's not obligatory, but doing what's recommended and what's encouraged. And then the third point that we can implement to optimize our Ramadan is that we should exercise extra cautiousness with what we consume. So obviously this means that things that are haram or that are doubtful, we should avoid them. Right? Even if they're not necessarily haram per se, 100%, but if they're doubtful, we should avoid them, because we don't want to jeopardize our fast, and we don't want to jeopardize this month of worship for something that's so trivial, like a little bit of food. We should avoid that. But especially in our day and age, we should also consider what we consume, what we intake, not just with our mouths, but what we intake with our eyes and our ears. Is that we live in a time where we're constantly inundated with sensual stimulations, right? We're always seeing pictures, there's movies, video clips, news feeds, televisions, programs. Is that we're constantly being flooded with all of these stimulation. And the believers are supposed to lower their gaze from those things that Allah has prohibited, and we should take this time of Ramadan to step back and stop consuming all these pictures and stop consuming all this stimulation. So in a sense, they always mention that fasting is from food, of course, and from drink and other activities, but we could maybe extend that in a sense, obviously not in an obligatory sense, but we should try to have some form of fasting from distractions, and from all these stimulations and social media and things like that. We should try to have a distance such that our minds are not filled with these pictures and these images, and that we can have more focus and more dedication. Right? A lot of times when our minds are filled with these things, even when we get up to pray, something comes in our mind that relates to something that we saw on our phones or something that we saw on our computers. Is that we want to clear ourselves to some degree as much as possible from all of these images. Right? So we should cut back on screen time, and we should cut back on wasting time, and we should cut back as much as possible on social media and avoid extraneous videos and movies, especially during this month of Ramadan, which is only for a short period of time. Right? And we all know the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, right, from the excellence of a person's Islam, that from excellence of a person's Islam is leaving alone that which doesn't concern them. And ultimately, a lot of these social media outlets is that they're almost like an experiment. Right? These are things that are new. These are new technologies. The results, it's only kind of now that they're looking at the results that a lot of this social media has, and that it's not always positive. That they link it to increase of stress, to anxiety, right? It affects people's sleep. Maybe it has addiction patterns. Affects people's self-esteem, right? It affects the loneliness. People are feeling more lonely nowadays, and also people are more envious. They're looking at other people's. So we should try to step away from these things and kind of, if you wish, have a fast of, all this sensual stimuli. And I just want to mention, with regards to this point, one of the scholars, Imam al-Haddad, he summarizes the secret and the objective of fasting beautifully. And he says, it's so amazing what he says. I just found this really to be amazing. He says, among the etiquettes of fasting is that one should not sleep much during the day, nor eat much during the night. Rather, one should restrict oneself in these matters to the extent that the touch of hunger and thirst is actually felt. Thus will the soul be disciplined and the desires curbed, which will lead eventually to the illumination of the heart. This is the secret of fasting and its objective. Right. And then the fourth point, that I wanted to mention about how we can optimize our Ramadan, so making our intentions and correcting our intentions, following the prophetic practice, right, avoiding things that are unnecessary, and having scrupulousness, is the fourth, is that we return, of course everyone knows, is that the Quran. Is that we return back to the Quran, and everyone is aware that Ramadan is the month of Quran, as Allah says, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس, is that Ramadan is the month in which Quran was revealed. However, beyond just reading the Quran, there's another aspect of the Quran that is very important, which is sometimes neglected, but that's reflecting upon the Quran and really contemplating its meanings with depth. And that if you look at one of the things that distinguished the companions and the early generations of Muslims, is that they had this tadabbur in the Quran, is that they had this deep reflection and this deep contemplation of the Quran. So not only did they understand the meanings of the Quran, but the Quran penetrated their depth and the depth of their souls, and it reflected their lives. right? So you find stories of the companions or the pious predecessors that many of them would just spend the night praying, simply repeating one verse over and over again, right? And why would they be repeating one verse over and over again? Because they weren't just reading the Quran, but they were tasting the Quran. They had dhawq, and they were experiencing the Quran. So yes, it's good. Obviously, we should definitely read more Quran, but at the same time, we should make an effort to really understand and let the Quran penetrate us, and to delve deeply in the meanings of the Quran. Now, we don't want to read the Quran the same way that someone reads the newspaper. Right? The object of the Quran is not to be read like that. And that's why they mention that there's two types of khatams that a person can have, right? Quran completions. Is that one is a person reads, right? They read juz after juz, and that's good. Obviously, obviously that's a rewarding, that's a good action, and that should be done, you know, as much as a person can do. But another type of khatam of Quran that we can have is a khatam of reflection. So every day someone opens the Quran, and it might just be 2 verses or 3 verses, but think about those verses and reflect deeply upon those verses. And if someone has access to scholarship, to the tafsir, read what the mufassirin, read what the scholars of the Quran have said about that, how they explain that. And that's the thing about reflection, is that when someone reflects about something, when someone turns one's mind about something, is that that thing becomes part of them. So if we reflect deeply upon the Quran, is that the Quran will become part of us and will exist in our souls. And that's why when Aisha was asked about the character of the Prophet ﷺ, what did she say? She said that his character was the Quran. It was as if he was a walking Quran. And there's a beautiful benefit that they mention about the Quran, and everyone knows the merit and the rank and the beauty of the Quran. But I found this to be very, very beautiful, is that it said that the Quran, it was revealed to one of the angels, and he became the best of angels, the angel Jibreel. And then it was revealed in Ramadan, and it became the best of months. And then it was revealed on a night, and that became the best of nights, Laylatul Qadr. And then it was revealed on our Prophet, and he's the best of messengers. And then it was revealed to this nation, and by it we became potentially the best of nations. And then the Prophet ﷺ said that it doesn't reside in a person's heart, except that they become the best of people. خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ, is that the Prophet said the best of those are those who learn the Quran and to teach it. So this is a great bounty. These are the great bounties of Allah. And you know, these are just 4 points. There's a lot that can be said about optimizing a Ramadan and taking advantage of these blessings. But may Allah give us tawfiq, may Allah bless us, and let this be a fruitful Ramadan for us, and let it be the best of Ramadans that we have. And may He accept us in this Ramadan and continue to bless us outside of Ramadan. Allah Azza wa Jalla يقول وبقول يهدي المهتدين جل في علا وإذا قرئ القرآن فاستمعوا له وأنصتوا لعلكم ترحمون وقال عز من قائل كريم فإذا قرأت القرآن فاستعذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم الكريم لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. So one of the important aspects of Ramadan is our attitude towards it. Is that how do we receive this month of Ramadan? And that ultimately we should perceive this month of Ramadan as a gift, right? And we should have the feelings of joy and not feel that it's a burden or something imposed upon us. Right? There's a difference between someone who fasts out of love, hoping to receive the mercy of Allah, and those who fast because they merely have to. And that we want to inculcate in ourselves this reception of Ramadan. And we want to see it as a guest, right? And if a guest comes to your house, As we know, we should honor our guests. So we want to see this month of Ramadan, we want to have joy with this month of Ramadan. And Allah says in another verse, not pertaining to other rulings, but it pertains to Ramadan as well, Allah says, مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ حَرَجٍ, is that Allah doesn't want to make things difficult for you, وَلَكِنْ يُرِيدُ لِيُطَهِّرَكُمْ وَلِيُتِمَّ نِعْمَتَهُ عَلَيْكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ, is that He wants to purify you and to perfect His blessings upon you, so that hopefully you'll be thankful. And I just want to end with, there's a beautiful poem that someone composed about Ramadan, which I think incorporates or contains the spirit of Ramadan. So he says here, Marhaban ya shahr Ramadan, Marhaban shahr al-ibadah, is that he's addressing Ramadan and saying, welcome, O month of Ramadan, welcome, O month of worship. Marhaban ya shahr Ramadan, Marhaban shahr al-sa'adah, is that welcome, O month of Ramadan, welcome, O month of felicity. Marhaban shahr Ramadan, anta shahr al-istifada, is that welcome, O month of Ramadan, you are the month of benefiting. Marhaban ya khayr qadim bil-awa'id wa ziyada, is that welcome, O best of guests, who comes with gifts and more. Fika yughfaru kulla dambin wattaqi yu'ta murada, is that in you, in this month, all sins are forgiven. And the one who's righteous, is that he's given that which he intends. تفتح أبواب المواهب يرحم المولى عباده, is that the doors of giving are open, and Allah forgives His slaves. يبدل العصيان طاعة والشقاوة بالسعادة, is that disobedience is changed into obedience, and wretchedness into happiness. أنت السيد كل شهر نعم هاتيك السيادة, is that you are the preeminent of all the other months. What a blessed month you are. كل باب فيك يفتح للجنان المستجادة, is that every door of paradise is opened in you, of paradise. وجهنم فيك تغلق أوصلوها بالوصادة, is that the hellfire in you in this month is closed, and is closed. And then he says, حسنات تتضاعف فوق ألف وزيادة, is that your blessings are increased more than 1,000 or more. ربي زدنا كل خير أعطنا كل السعادة, O our Lord, increase us in every good and give us every form of happiness. واختم العمر بأفضل عمل حين نفادا, and then end our lives with the best of actions when we leave this world. واهدي عبدك للمراضي واشفي جسمه وفؤادا, and that guide your slave to what pleases you, and cure him in his body and his heart. وأجب كل دعاء أعطنا كل مرادا, and that give us answer all our prayers and give us everything that we intend. من حبيب وصديق أخلص الله الوداد, from our beloved ones and our friends, those who we have pure love for them. And then أصلح اللهم لكل معاش والمعادة, that rectify for us, for everyone, their lives and their return into Allah, their akhirah. أعطنا الحسنى إلهي, is that give us goodness, O our Lord. ثم أكرم بالزيادة, then honor us with an increase. وصلاة الله تغشى المصطفى مولى السيادة, and that the blessings of Allah encompass the chosen one, the Master Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَاعْلَمُوا يَا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ أَنَّ اللَّهَ أَمَرَ بِأَمْرٍ بَدَأَ فِي بِنَفْسِهِ فقال عز من قائل إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد عبدك ورسولك النبي الأمي وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم, وبارك على سيدنا محمد عبدك ورسولك النبي الأمي وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم اعز الإسلام وانصر المسلمين. اللهم اعز الإسلام وانصر المسلمين. اللهم اعز الإسلام وانصر المسلمين. اللهم كن لإخواننا المسلمين في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم اغفر لنا وللمسلمين والمسلمات المؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات مغفرة ظاهرة وباطنة سرا وعلانية لا تغادر لنا ذنبا ولا نكتسب بعدها خطيئة ولا إثما. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واشكروه على نعمه يزدكم ولذكر الله الأكبر.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.